The birds' favorite songs you do not hear, for their most flamboyant music takes place when their wings are stretched above the trees and they are smoking the opium of pure freedom. It is healthy for the prisoner to have faith that one day he will again move about wherever he wants, feel the wondrous grit of life, less structured, find all wounds, debts stamped canceled, paid. I once asked a bird, "How is it that you fly in this gritty of darkness and gravity?" She responded, "Love lifts me." Our speaker this morning, who unfortunately is running a little late in his journey from Montgomery County, is Adrian H.L. Graham. He's the author of the UU pamphlet, Finding What We Believe, which you've probably seen this in our pamphlet area out front. Adrian joined the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore in 2023 and has served as both the River Road UU congregation and the UU Congregation of Life of Rockville, his current location, where he has focused on congregational life and in engagement. Adrian is a lover of the natural world in all of its glorious diversity, including human cultures. He was bit by the birding bug in 2023 when he was exploring nature in and around the Richmond, Virginia area, which leads us to his topic this morning entitled Love Lifts Me, Life and Death Lessons from Birds. During this turning season of the year, human societies seem to be doing something metaphorically similar. Are there useful lessons we can learn from the birds around us? We can learn to watch and listen carefully, and especially, we can learn to sing.
Right now, and one of the things that brings me joy is birding. Does anyone know what the difference between birding and bird watching is? Intensity, that's a good one. Any other thoughts? I do, yes. Yes, that can be a difference, it's keeping track of the birds. Any other thoughts? Intentionality. So intensity, tracking, intentionality, all those things. I'd like to say that bird watching is I'm trying not to get in trouble, can be a passive appreciation. It's stepping out or sitting onto your porch and noticing a bird and going, oh, isn't that beautiful? Or having a bird feeder so that it attracts birds and you enjoy the beauty of the birds when they come to your yard. Birding is a little more active and intense. It's less of a spectator sport. It's going out looking for the birds, learning about the birds, tracking the birds, distinguishing the birds one from another. And that activity is very new to me in the past couple of years, and it brings me a lot of joy. And so I want to talk to you some today about lessons that I learn from birds. In doing so, I'm going to share a brief reading from this book, Better Living Through Birding, which you may have heard of at some point. The subtitle is Notes from a Black Man in the Natural World. It's written by Christian Cooper, who was an African-American man birding in Central Park several years ago now, and you may remember the story. So I won't repeat it at the moment, but if you're curious, talk to me afterwards. So a brief reading from his book, First Pleasure of Birding, The Beauty of the Birds. If you've never seen a male scarlet tanager in full breeding plumage, a bird of such incandescent hue set off by jet black wings and tail that it makes a stoplight look dim. Then a knock your socks off experience awaits you. And that's just the beginning of the show. From the gaudy technicolor riot of a painted bunting to the serene, pristine grace of a great egret, from the effortlessly soaring majesty of a golden eagle to the fierce frenzy of a hummingbird, from the bold color blocks of a red-headed woodpecker to the exquisite nuance of pattern and muted tones of a Lincoln's sparrow. But most people don't realize the reasons why, of all the spectacular creatures with which we share this planet, birds captivate us as no others can. What makes birding such a phenomenon? Why not mammaling or insecting? Certainly those pursuits have their adherents, as the thousands who visit Africa on safari or who catalog butterflies can attest. And in fact, there is a large degree of overlap among all these obsessions, counting myself as one of the multi-obsessed. Once you tune into one aspect of nature, you eventually become aware of the whole connected network of life around us. Thank you, Cindy. Good morning again, Cedarhurst. It is good to be here with you again. I had some trouble getting here this morning, you may have noticed. And some of you may know that I mean by that not just driving here this morning, but preparing to be here with you this morning. And so I have a sermon here that I have written, and I'm probably going to share most of it with you. But I'm not sure that what I have written is what I need to say. And so some of it may be ad-libbed. And in the tradition of my youth and childhood, it is often customary, I should say, to share the words of a psalm before speaking in the congregation. And those words are, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." So to translate, I hope that what I have to say, whether it's what I've written or comes from my heart, is useful and meaningful and applicable for you in today's service. So earlier, I asked what brings you joy and told you about the difference between birding and bird watching from my perspective. What I didn't ask you was, do you ever notice when you learn something new that it pops up everywhere? The first time you learn a word and then you hear it or you read it everywhere. The first time you find a concept, you encounter it over and over and over again. Well, that's kind of like what birding became for me. The first time I realized that there were birds that I had never noticed or songs that I had never heard, then I began to see birds everywhere and hear birds everywhere. And that is something that I now pay attention to, that I didn't pay attention to before, both because I didn't know to pay attention to it, but also because I just wasn't interested. But now I pay attention. And so my question for you is, what will you choose to pay attention to? And so now a sermon. You ready? I am constantly listening for birdsong and peering through my binoculars, my bins, my knocks, depending on your local dialect, trying to identify species by what I see and what I hear. Birds are everywhere. How did I not notice their stunning abundance before? Why did they all kind of just look and sound the same to me, blending into the background? I can't believe the incredible diversity of avian species. They are endlessly fascinating. As a child growing up in urban New Jersey, there were a handful of birds that were very familiar to me, which I could identify easily whenever I would see them. Maybe you know these. Blue jay, cardinal, pigeon, crow. Some birds were a bit more confusing. Is that a sparrow or a finch? To my undiscerning eyes and ears, the noisy little brown birds that could be found all over the place were almost completely indistinguishable. I wasn't even sure there was a difference between a sparrow and a finch. Were the ones with the little black masks the sparrows and the plainer brown ones finches? Well, no. But also, yes. See? Confusing. Some birds lived only in my imagination, as I did not have the opportunity to experience any in my day-to-day real life. The bald eagle has been a symbol of the United States since the 18th century, becoming the official national bird only recently, less than a year ago, when President Joe Biden signed legislation deeming it so into law. Now that I live closer to rural America, I see them with some regularity. But for most of my life, the bald eagle was just as elusive, impossible, and mythical as a phoenix that is resurrected to life from its own flaming ashes. And there were those too that I totally got wrong. For much of my life, I referred to the bird that I now know is properly called a common starling, a European starling here in the United States, and just plain old starling in areas of Europe where they are native. I refer to starlings as larks, or sometimes meadowlarks, which is a totally different bird. Why? I don't know. I must have picked up the name somewhere and assigned it to those birds that I most often found in large flocks on the ground in grassy areas of a park, which to my young city boy mind must have been what a meadow was, whatever that is. That makes sense, right? Okay. It certainly did make sense to me until I learned that I was wrong. How embarrassing, spending a lifetime being so sure of a thing only to learn that you've been confidently wrong the whole time. I wonder if you know something of that pain. You see, until recently, the spring of 2023 to be precise, I had not yet learned to pay attention to the birds all around me. The ones who make a racket of chirps and songs are noticeable, of course. And the ones that come near when you're eating, do you ever have those birds that hop on your table hoping that you'll give them a French fry or a piece of bread or something, you know? Or the ones you might not encounter very often depending on your life circumstances. Perhaps you don't live near water and don't come across many ducks or geese or other waterfowl, but surely everyone knows that ducks go quack and turkeys gobble, 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 gobble. Broadly speaking, I knew enough to identify these seemingly random and disparate creatures as birds, but that was as far as my curiosity led. They were part of the scenery, flitty, vociferous, possibly filthy and frightening characters in the background of nature whose only point of interest to me was that they could fly. Well, most of them can. No, I certainly had not yet learned to pay attention. Now, an epiphany can be any manifestation of the divine breaking through to us mortal folks, whether that be as an apparition, an inspiration, an idea, an omen, or even in the guise of birds. Though I only began to think of myself as a birder, that's someone who goes birding as opposed to a bird watcher, I only began to think of myself as a birder in the spring of 2023. It was really in that summer, no, actually, it was really in the summer of 2020, a few years before that, during the depth of the COVID pandemic shutdown, when the world became still enough, quiet enough for noticing, that it became easier that the seeds of attention giving were sown. At the time, I still lived in downtown Baltimore in a neighborhood near the stadiums called Pigtown. I remember the streets quiet, so quiet it was almost eerie. And I remember hearing birdsong. It felt really loud, really loud. In the absence of vehicular traffic and with most human beings remaining indoors, stepping outside felt like visiting another planet. For the first time ever, at least that I was aware of, a woodpecker was pecking away at a tree whose branches shaded the deck where I sat for my daily dose of outside. And what was that screeching? A hawk? In downtown Baltimore? What? And what was that burst of color I just saw? It looked bright and yellow, maybe. Ah, a goldfinch. Wow. I could not then have told you that the creatures I was beginning to notice in the midst of that global nightmare were not just a woodpecker, a hawk, and a goldfinch, but a downy woodpecker, a red-shouldered hawk, an American, or if you're from New Jersey like me, Eastern, goldfinch. That knowledge came later when the birding bug finally and forcefully bit me. I wonder if you've ever been bitten by an interest or a passion that shakes you so thoroughly that the way you experience the world and your part in it just permanently changes. To me, this sort of course-changing, life-altering moment, this epiphany, this mystical breaking through of the divine to deliver some message of import, some profound meaning to us, this is where I readily and gladly meet God. Remember, we are Earth. In January of 2024, after just 8 months as a novice birder, I came to understand that vultures generally get a bad rap. They are commonly seen as ugly, perhaps gross, and may even be feared. But the more I encounter these supposedly ugly, gross, and fearsome creatures, the more I have come to appreciate them. They play a vital role in their ecosystems, often consuming the carcasses of other animals that have died. Their scientific name, Cathartes aura, means purifying breeze, and its genus, Cathartes, is cognate with the word catharsis. Incidentally, they also eat other things like fruits, but we know them for eating, the roadkill. They are also kind of beautiful up close, somewhat statuesque, certainly graceful. That's where the breeze part comes from. Have you ever seen them just soaring and gliding in the air? They actually seem to be rather good-tempered, despite human misgivings. And I thought to myself, what can it mean for me that January morning to be encountering a turkey vulture on New Year's Day? Well, there's a lot about this world and my experience of it, certainly I am going to go with assuming that it's true of your experience as well, that there's a lot in the world that is ugly and gross and fearsome. But through the example of this hulking bird, perhaps I can learn to consume and be nourished by those things in me that have died or that need to die, to help purify and keep my spiritual ecosystem healthy. Perhaps I can come to see that the past and the present that I constantly ruminate over doesn't have to maintain a death grip on my life. Perhaps, if I look closely, I can find the beauty and grace in my experience, learn from it, and let it go, soaring like the turkey vulture, the purifying breeze in a bright day. Yes, death is a natural part of our experience as living beings, and many of us hold on to it tightly so that we can wrap it up and keep it at arm's length. Out of fear, out of pain, out of ignorance, out of uncertainty, whatever our reasons. But what if we could learn to embrace it in its due time and honor it with its due place in the ongoing cycle of life? We die little deaths and big ones all the time. Relationships falter, trust is broken, mistakes are made. We leave the important work of living incomplete and undone. Nations and empires crumble in the course of time. Death, though painful, need not be the end. Our empty, exhausted cups need not mean that we no longer have any use. Indeed, the purpose of any cup is to be filled and then emptied and then filled again. We are cups that need to be filled with love so that we can give it away, so that we can receive it in return. What if the miracle of every life is that we live and then we die, and we live yet again through our love? What if our purpose in living is to pay attention to the things that matter, the things that have lessons to teach us so that we do well in our living and we do well in our loving? And when the time comes, we also do well in our dying, thereby leaving a legacy of wellness and love. We live, we love, we die, we begin again in love as individuals, as communities, as nations. How is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness? Love lifts me. Love lifts me. What a beautiful gift. Today I know much more about birds than I ever thought possible. Thousands of species and colors, bright and dull, singing and silent, flying and flightless. Becoming a birder has not only given me more of an excuse to spend time in nature, my rightful place, but a good amount of exercise and fresh air and many more lessons than I have had time to share with you this morning. One of those lessons is to sing loudly and joyfully whenever the mood strikes, even if it's 3 a.m. Not likely to happen for me, but you get the idea. There's a song in the musical Hair called My Conviction. Do you know that song? Do you know the musical? Okay, you know the musical. Don't remember the song. But the song lyrics go like this. I would just like to say that it is my conviction that longer hair and other flamboyant affectations of appearance are nothing more than the male's emergence from his drab camouflage into the gaudy plumage which is the birthright of his sex. There's a peculiar notion that elegant plumage and fine feathers are not proper for the male, when actually that is the way things are in most species. I thought about singing that to you to prove a point, but it wasn't the right moment. Maybe I'll sing it later. But yes, it is my conviction that birds have much to teach us. We Unitarian Universalist humans have such lovely songs to sing. Songs about justice and equity and transformation and pluralism and interconnectedness and interdependence and generosity and love. We must sing our songs to the world, fill its cup with love, and renew the earth with the fullness of our joy. How can we keep from singing? May it be so.